it says on the next page, it says in parentheses, see the section of negative commandments number 6. Let's take a look at the negative commandments number 6 for a quick second. Let's go to the other side. And it says over there, it's a negative commandment to do no work on the Shabbat. So let's take a look at number 20 and 6 and compare them. Number 20 says, rest on Shabbat. Number 6 says, do not do work on Shabbat. It pretty much sounds the same. The idea of it being the same indicates that not being said, we're going to notice difference, obviously, but the importance of connecting it to the negative is to make it a stricter point. Right? This past week we read in the Torah in the parasha, love your friend. Right? We talked about it Thursday night. It also says don't hate your brother. Right? Friend, brother, same thing. So if it says love, it doesn't hate, so you might argue the same thing. So what we understand is that there is a difference, but by expressing it in the negative, it puts more emphasis to the point. In other words, you should do the right thing and don't you dare do the wrong thing. You get it? So we know that there are far more negative commandments than positive. In the total of the 613, the 248 were positive and the 365 were negative. Right? That's a lot of mitzvot. 613, a whole lot more than the Goyim have only 7, right? But it's interesting that of the 613, when the Jewish people were asked to accept the Torah at Mount Sinai, and other nations were asked as well. The other nations refused. They felt it was too burdensome, or was it in line with their character? We accepted it. But we accepted it sight unseen. We didn't really know the 613. And that's an important lesson to learn, because the expression that the Jews used is an expression you almost memorize. The expression is Naaseh v'nishma. We will do, and then we will learn. Right? Which is the exact opposite of what it normally should be. Normally you learn about it, and then you do it. Normally you learn about it and see if you're interested. The Jews said we're interested even before we know about it. This mitzvah of Naaseh v'nishma, or this expression of Naaseh v'nishma, which is uniquely Jewish, because the other nations, they were normal. They said, well, what's in it? Then God said, and they were unhappy. We didn't even bother with that. We just simply said, sight unseen. You might argue as to the sanity of that. I mean, if I asked you for a favor, Ellie, can I borrow $10,000? Can I borrow? I want to make a loan. Can I make a loan? Sure. Okay. It's for $100,000 though. You don't mind, right? Because you said sure in the first place. Yeah. Before $100,000, right? Why not? I would suggest that people really should think before they commit to something. Can you do me a favor? Sure. What is it? Jump off a roof. Come on. Reasonable people ask. The Jews didn't, and yet we're supposed to be reasonable. That's the one thing that God demands of us. Be reasonable. Use your head. Figure out the truth. See if it makes sense. If it does, buy into it. If it doesn't, forget it. So it's a little out of the extraordinary. What do you say?
Where do you learn this out that God gave this over to the Jewish people? They accepted this is kind of the law.
Correct. You want to know where they learned out the idea of asking for the other Goyim as well. So I'll tell you that one. You can look it up. It's a very interesting. Since you asked, I'll address it for a quick second. It says in the Chumash, in the Torah, at the very end, in Deuteronomy, book number 5, chapter 30, chapter 33. Chapter 33, and it says there, it says as follows. There's the final parsha of the Torah. It's read in simple Torah when we conclude. And it says, this is the bracha that Moshe Rabbeinu blessed the people with before his passing. And of course, that's the way that you depart from the world, is you depart from your loved ones. And for Moshe Rabbeinu, all the people were loved ones, not just his immediate family, but everyone. He was the leader of all the people. And every one of us connected with him, And he's getting this bracha before he passes. And this is what he says. Let me tell you a little bit of history, he says. Hashem said, Moshe said, that Hashem had appeared at Mount Sinai, and he then appeared at Mount Paran. No. It says Hashem appeared to the Jews at Mount Sinai. It's a recollection of the Torah experience, having shown forth from Seir. He had just shown forth at Seir, and he had appeared at Mount Paran. So we know that Seir is the nation of Esau, and Paran is the nation of Ishmael. Avram Avinu had two sons. Yitzchak carried on the mantle of the Jewish people, and his other son Ishmael became the father of the Arab nation, and they were Paran. Yitzchak continues on the leadership of the Jewish people, and you have to know all this history, folks. It's really important. And Yitzchak has two sons also, and he has Esau and Yaakov. Yaakov takes over the mantle of leadership of the Jewish people, Jacob, and Esau becomes Seir. God went to Seir and then to Paran, and then he came to Sinai. So here the rabbis learn, and the Gemara says it, that God had offered the Torah to Esau, even though he hadn't accepted the leadership or the continuance of the Jewish people. He also offered the Torah to Paran, to the Arabs, and they also had not, carried on but he offered them the Torah as well. In fact, the Torah, from here the Gemara learns, God didn't pick only these two nations. God picked all the nations, every nation. It's just two examples. But when in the Torah, when the Torah writes teachings, oftentimes it serves as an example. A specific may serve as an example for a generality. The specific is these two nations, but the generality is all of them. And he went to every one of them and he asked them, "How about the Torah?" And they said, "What's in it?" And they didn't like it. Maybe he went to one nation and they said, "Well, you can't eat pig, you can't eat pork." "Oh, forget that. Sorry, I can't hold back from bacon and eggs in the morning." So that's in the Torah, and stuff like that. But these two that were selected were very interesting because he went to Esau, to Seir, and they asked what's in it, and God said, "Bloodshed is forbidden. It's forbidden to murder." And they said, "Well, that's certainly one we can't use." And these are the European nations who have been warring since the time of the turn of the common era 2,000 years ago. And that's all they do in Europe is fight. Right? All they do is and murder and so forth. We can't accept it. Sorry. Then he went to the Arabs. The Arabs said, "What's in it?" And God said, "Well, don't steal." The Arabs said, "Well, we can't do that. It's against our culture." I mean, everything the Arabs do is steal. The Alibaba and the 40 thieves, you know that. We got to steal. So they didn't accept the Torah. But the beauty of the Jewish acceptance is that when God came to Sinai and offered the Torah to the Jews didn't ask what's in it. They said, "We will do and accept sight unseen, even if it's $100,000. In Jewish, they ask God for a discount, I'm sure.
Only going place.
Retail. So retail, so go ahead. Jews go wholesale. But I think that the idea of this willingness to accept something, which I'm questioning the reasonability of it, is simply this. Or simply the answer is, God said, "Here's the Torah. This is my way of life. This is the path of Judaism. This is the path of the creation, how I created the world." And the Jewish people had that connection with God of such magnitude of trust that said, we want this kind of life. Now, this is important because obviously you can live a good life. You don't have to be a murderer or a thief to be a good human being too. But if you want to be Jewish, then it takes more than 7, it takes 613. Of course, that 613 number becomes 271 in current times. And why is the number reduced? Because there's a lot of mitzvot dealing with the Beit HaMikdash and Yerushalayim that is not applicable today, and we're going to learn much about that today. So I'm saying now a non-Jew wants to become Jewish, to convert. So the non-Jew is going to do the same thing as the Jewish people did at Mount Sinai. You gotta say Nasa the Mishra. Because why? Because you can spend the next 5 years learning all 613, and then go for conversion. Or you can go for conversion if you feel you've mastered at least this much. And then at the conversion ceremony, the rabbis will say to you, you accept 613. In other words, you accept the fact that one day when Mashiach comes, we will reinstate those 613 sacrifices and all the service in the temple and so forth. We need to accept all that. And you'll be asked to accept that sight unseen. I mean, there's many mitzvahs that you don't know about. You just started learning. You learned for a year and a half. You're not ready, and you feel you're ready for conversion, but in reality, there's a whole lot of Torah still left to learn. Are you going to accept sight unseen mitzvahs that you don't know just yet? And that's a commitment that a non-Jew takes upon himself or herself at the conversion ceremony to say, I accept the full burden of the 613. And that's sight unseen. And that's something that, and it's an interesting thing, you know. I always tell a famous story that I had this young lady with me many years ago, who was living with me about 8 months and really into it. I really saw a great amount of devotion on her part. And she took the liberty to learn a few mitzvahs ahead from what we were studying. And she bumped her head and came across the mitzvah of the prohibition of homosexuality. And she was absolutely stunned. She could not believe that the Torah forbids it. So I showed it to her black and white. In fact, it was yesterday's parsha. It was yesterday, right? And it's abomination and so forth. And the interesting thing about the whole idea is that she said, I can't accept such a mitzvah. I mean, not that I'm not personally, she said, but I have people and friends and relatives, whatever, you know, I mean, in the closet, out of the closet, and they all, and they're fine people. I said, I didn't say they weren't fine people. I just said they did a wrong thing. I know a lot of people don't keep Shabbos. It's the wrong thing. They're fine people. For whatever reason, they're not keeping Shabbos. They don't know how important it is, whatever. I mean, we try to, we don't judge people and say you're a bum because of that, but we do say it's the wrong thing to do. I mean, you got to own up to that. And she left. And she never came back. And I was really, but I've had a few near misses, you know, in many years, lots of near misses. But I think the important thing is that people understand that our job is to know the mitzvahs to the best of our ability, and we can't learn all 613 in the span of time that we have. But what we try to do is at least learn those mitzvahs that are applicable in our time. So if I don't finish all this recital in this book, let's say all these mitzvahs, everybody's obligated to finish this book on their own. You have to learn this book. You have to know, because you never know what question will come at you at the ceremony of conversion. It's a full-hour interview of a barrage of questions coming from 3 rabbis who want to throw it at you and say, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? And you have to be, you know, on top of your game and really sharp. And the 271 is really what we need to focus on today. But frankly, I would say that even for Jewish people, I would say to Jewish people, you know what? Again, you know, maybe you're not that scholarly, maybe you're not that religious, whatever, but you do need to know this. This you got. And the way to understand it again is positives and negatives, and the first half, the second half. And again, the negatives are more numerous. And the reason they're going to be more numerous, the rabbis were bothered by the fact that there's more numerous negatives and positives. In the overall 613, I said there's 248 positive and 365 negative. So the 248 positive corresponds to the organs of the human body, which each organ cries out, please do a mitzvah with me. Positive mitzvah. The 365 corresponds to the 365 days of the solar calendar, in which each day cries out, please don't ruin me. I was born nice and pure and clean. Don't make a mistake on me today. And that indicates that there's more of the negativity than positive. So the rabbis were bothered by this in the Gemara, in the Talmud. The rabbi said, man has a greater propensity to do wrong than he has opportunity to do good. So God, what you created for in the first place then? It's not fair. And the rabbis indicated, well, whatever God's reason is, fair or not fair, the only thing we can do is accept the fact that we've got to be a lot more careful, besides being proactive, and therefore Hashem help us to do truth. And that's the answer the rabbis came up with. But in our book, again, the negatives are more numerous. 77 positive, 194 negative. 77 positive, 194 negative. And as I said, they interrelate often. But when you have a situation where you have a positive mitzvah and a negative mitzvah, and you're trying to figure out why the repetition, the answer is because when you do it in the negativity, you bring the greater emphasis. Violation of a negative command is far more serious than failure to do a positive. If you haven't put a mezuzah on your door, that's unfortunate. But if you want to eat pork, that's a whole lot worse. So you have to realize that for as much as you want to be energetic and active to do mitzvot, you equally have to be on guard and very, very careful and not to do or violate anything that's negative, or to do something that's a negative mitzvah. So with this in mind, wanted to bring to your attention the first four mitzvahs that we've done this on many occasions. Now's not the time to do it, but the first four mitzvahs deal with faith or belief or knowledge, actually. And we've talked many times that this belief in Hashem, number one, that He's one, number two, that you love Him, number three, and that you fear Him, number four, are mitzvahs that we have discussed. I've given out papers on it. I may do it again. If you haven't heard it, had a chance to do it, certainly contact me and I'll get you those papers to work with. By the way, also, oftentimes people ask me a lot of things after the class. I want to mention this also. And oftentimes I forget about it because it's too many people in the garage. So I would ask you, use these envelopes not only for checks, but for personal notes as well. Let's say you need an appointment and you'll ask me over there and I'll say, sure. I'll say Tuesday, Wednesday, and I'll forget all about it. So it's just unfortunate that way. So if you just put a little note in here and say, you need an appointment, or is the time frame available, or I'd like to ask you a particular question, you can call me back and stuff like that, with a phone number, and that serves as an important double purpose. This way I can really be sure to let's say, pay attention to it. So learning these first four mitzvahs, we understand that these first four mitzvahs about our knowledge of Hashem and our commitment to our beliefs are in fact constant. In other words, these are things that you have to do positively every single moment of your life, which simply means that it's a state of mind. You can't do two things at one time, but you can think four things at one time. In fact, you can think six. And we all know that there are 6 constant mitzvahs. I have a paper on that too, and you can get that anytime you want to put a note in there. The 6 constant mitzvahs, 4 are positive, 2 are negative. 4 positive, once again, they need to be memorized. How many people have heard me mention this on my phone, on my voicemail? Heard me say that? Right? So please remember the 6 constant mitzvahs. The first 4 positive are awareness of Hashem, knowledge of Hashem, God is one, love and fear Him. The negatives, you shall have no other, and you shall not follow your whims and desires of heart and eyes, but rather use your head and make the right decisions. And that's constant. Because you're called upon to make decisions all the time. Now, let's say you do something wrong. That means at that moment, what did you do? You forgot about Hashem momentarily. And you forgot about all 6. So really that sin is really 7. 6 plus 1. On the other hand, let's say you did something right. You did a mitzvah. At that point, you are affirming your 6 beliefs. So therefore, you really did not do 1 mitzvah, you did 7. And that's the understanding of how we begin our day with these first 4 commandments. And I think it's valuable that maybe every Sunday when we meet, we should in fact just mention these 4 as a prerequisite to whatever we want to learn on this given day. So I'm going to mention these 4 once again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hashem, he's 1. Love him, fear him. Okay. Now we had discussed other mitzvos, but we skipped last week over the 19 and 20, which was for Shabbos. In 19, Shabbos was a proactive thing to do Shabbos, make it holy, and declare it with words. The Torah says, number 19, remember the Shabbos day to keep it holy. What does the word remember mean? It means to do something not mentally, but it means to do something verbally. Say it. Say the words, Shabbos is holy. We ask oftentimes women to add that word when they light candles. Shabbat Kodesh. We ask men to do it in the davening, but then it's repeated once again, the Rabbanon, over a cup of wine. We want to emphasize the point of the Rabbanon, of the rabbinical concept. What's the rabbinical concept? So the mitzvahs of the Rabbanon are as follows. There are basically 3 avenues in which rabbinic law is legislated. 2 of them deal with their approach to Torah law. But again, rabbinic law is authorized by the Torah, so it teaches us to listen to our elders and to listen to the scholars of every generation, and with the absolute belief that they are accepting upon themselves the tradition as handed down to them by their rabbis, who got it from their rabbis, who got it from their rabbis, all the way back to Mount Sinai, when God gave the Torah to Moshe Rabbeinu. And when he did, he gave not only the written Torah, the 5 books, but he also gave the oral Torah, the interpretations, and the explanations, and the details. We're going to talk about details a lot too in just a moment. There's a mitzvah to remember the Shabbos, keep it holy. So remembering, first detail to remember is that whenever you remember something best, you do it by verbalizing, saying the words. So you should say, Shabbos is holy. The context of which, the details of which, maybe during candlelighting, maybe during the davening, all this is explained to us by the rabbis, who again learned it from their rabbis all the way back to Har Sinai. And so the idea of trying to perform the mitzvah properly requires explanation, requires detail. Just don't, take a few words and apply it or perform it the way you wish. And we're going to learn that too. We're going to learn that there's explanations of how it's to be done. And how it's to be done is extremely important. Because if you don't do it the right way, and you make a mistake, you've done nothing. Or worse, as the 2 sons of Aaron taught, as we learned it 2 weeks ago, they made a mistake and they brought the wrong sacrifice and it caused them their death. So you want to be on top of your game and treat this the way you would treat a job. You got a job to do. So you want to do it right. You want to, get it right. The boss is going to be demanding. Did you succeed? Didn't you succeed? Did you do it the right way, the way I asked it to be done? And this is the same thing here. Our job is to do the mitzvah, serve Hashem. We get it right. But the details aren't necessarily specified in the Torah, in the 5 books. But the details were specified by Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu at Mount Sinai. And those details were handed down to the generations orally. They were not permitted to be written. Why weren't they permitted to be written? because it would promote discussion. Promoting discussion keeps it alive. If you're reading the book, you sit there quietly in the silence of the library, and you not very animated, and you just finish up the book. Maybe it makes an impact on you, maybe it doesn't, whatever. But when you're in a situation where you have to read it aloud, or at least verbalize it, let's say prayer. You don't pray when you're reading it. You say the words that you're reading. Kind of strange maybe for many people to understand that, but we as Jews understand that you read, if you're reading it, you say what you read. Bless you, Hashem. God of our fathers, God of our gods, it's just not good enough to read it. You gotta say it. And saying it is the idea that it becomes more ingrained within you. And that's an important detail. And how do you know that detail? The only way you know that detail is, of course, from the rabbis in the Talmud, who got it orally all through the generations. But in so doing, they teach us that was the reason why it was oral. Because God wanted to promote amongst people discussion. Nothing is more exciting than the discussion. So, yeah, I'm doing all the talking, so but for you guys, this is completely fair. That's why I encourage questions and comments and stuff, because we need all to animate. We do need it to get connected. By getting connected on a verbal level, we are actively learning. That's the whole idea. And so eventually, because through the generations it began to become forgotten, so therefore, once it became forgotten, the people, the rabbis, Rabbi Yehuda Nossi and Rabbi Gamliel and other great rabbis, the Mishnah, the Talmud, realized that they have to write something down because it was beginning to become forgotten. You would have all lost it. And there was a number of Jews, in fact, that denied it. There's no such thing as an oral Torah. Just do what you want. So the Torah teaches, don't burn the fire on Shabbat. So rabbis taught, don't burn the fire on Shabbat means you can't ignite a fire or extinguish a fire, even transfer a fire. Holidays you can transfer a fire on Shabbat. Along came this group called Tzaddukim, and they said, even if you ignited the fire before Shabbat, you can't have it on Shabbat. You have to blow it out before Shabbat starts. And that meant cold food and in the dark, right? And this was in a way of theirs to try and deny the oral tradition or the interpretation as was handed down to Moshe Rabbeinu. They never believed that. They never believed there was an oral Torah. It is what it says. Don't have a fire, don't have a fire. We know by tradition that you can have a fire if you light before and keep your food warm and have candles at the table to light up the dinner table. They refused to have that. And even though they made the rule worse for themselves, they relished in that because it was their opportunity to do what? To negate and rebel against rabbinic authority, which was written in the Talmud, which was handed down through the generations orally. They denied that such a thing ever existed. We know that we can't live without it. Belief in the oral tradition is as essential as believing in the written tradition from God. Everything's from God, including the oral tradition, including the Talmud, even if there are rabbis' names in there. Those rabbis are working within the authorization that was given to them by their rabbis, all the way back to Mount Sinai. Now, the authorization of these rabbis was in threefold. One, they can make the rules stricter. And in making the rules stricter, it protected the Torah law from being violated. If you can't write with a pencil on Shabbat, the rabbis ruled, no touching, because it's muktzah. Another way that they ruled was called a facilitating the betterment of society. each generation its own society. So when it became aware of the fact that a man assumed responsibility to his wife on marriage financially, even post-marriage for that matter, if he passed away or divorced, he would still have money to give by the basis of written in a contract called the ketubah. But that contract called the ketubah was set up by the rabbis, not by the Torah. The Torah said, man's assuming responsibility. The witnesses assume, watch him assume it, and it's over. Now, if a woman wanted to collect on that assumed responsibility, because he was reneging, let's say, and go to court with it, she'd have to yank those two witnesses back to court, which would be difficult if they live in New York and you live in LA. So therefore, the rabbis came up with a rule that said, write it in a contract, called it ketubah. That's all the woman has to do now. She go to the court, present the ketubah, and she gets what's deserving to her. And so the idea of facilitating the Torah's laws to make it work within society, as an example, the ketubah was another example of where the rabbis functioned and legislated Jewish law. That's the second way, making it functional, better. And then came the third way, called establish a mitzvah. And they were very reluctant to do that, because by establishing a mitzvah, it was a very, very, a lot of authority, a lot of shoulders to do that. And they only legislated 7 mitzvot d'Rabbanan. And you have to know those 7. 2 are holidays that occurred long after the Torah was given. Hanukkah and Purim. The rabbis felt that of all the many myriad of times when we suffered persecution and were saved by Hashem, these 2 deserve to stick out as a special observance or a special holiday, by virtue of the fact that they were so special and unusual, and the Talmud gives a whole discussion on it on both holidays. They became enshrined as Jewish holidays forever, as a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, a rabbinic law. 2 other very popular activities that we do, rabbis legislated to make mitzvah of, was the Tzilat Yadayim and lighting candles on Friday night. The lighting candles on Friday night is a very popular thing. It's a very popular thing. Everybody does it. Who doesn't just light candles? But yet it's not a Torah law. It's a rabbinic law. It's a rabbinic mitzvah. But when you do this mitzvah, you say a bracha. So let's talk about a bracha for a second. Everybody knows that brachas, by the way, is also the Rabbanan. Every bracha we make is of rabbinic origin and rabbinic mitzvah. The only set of brachas that is not a mitzvah, and that is not the Rabbanan, but from the Torah, is Birkat HaMazon, benching. A grace after meals, it says so specifically in the Torah, V'achalta v'savata v'rachta, shall eat and satisfy and bench, and that's a mitzvah of the Torah. That you know. But a mitzvah d'Rabbanan is all the other brachas. Now, one bracha is the kind of bracha that says, thank you Hashem for this pleasure. Shakol miyavad barom. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, for whatever it is that you're eating. But another bracha is to identify something you're doing as a mitzvah. I'm not putting an ornament on my door, I'm putting a mezuzah, it's a mitzvah. I'm not listening to music at the show on Rosh Hashanah, I'm listening to it's a mitzvah. I'm not eating matzah because I'm hungry, I'm eating matzah because it's a mitzvah. In order to show that, I have to add 4 special words to the bracha. What are those 4 special words? Asher, Kiddushanu, Mitzvotav, V'tzivah. So let's say I'm lighting candles. So I say, bless you, Hashem, Baruch Atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, King of the world. Asher Kiddushanu, that you made us holy. The mitzvah David Tzivanu with his mitzvahs and commanded us to light Shabbos candles. But wait a second. Hashem didn't command us to light Shabbos candles. Who did? The Rabbanan did. How can I say that? What I'm really saying is, bless you, Hashem, King of the world, who sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to listen to the Rabbanan, who in turn commanded me to, like Hanukkah, listen to Purim, listen to the Megillah, and so forth and so on. So basically, you have to know this kind of legislation. Now I'm going to introduce you to another point of the Rabbanan. This is what I want to get to today. That's a mitzvah called Zecher L'Mikdash. Zecher L'Mikdash is to remember the way it used to be in the days of the Beit HaMikdash. Meaning, we used to have a mitzvah. Now it's no longer applicable because there's no Beit HaMikdash. There's no sacrifices. So we don't do it anymore. Long came the rabbi and said, listen carefully. Do it again. Continue to do it. But on the strength of a rabbinic mitzvah, not a Torah mitzvah. What's the difference in strength? The difference is, on a Torah law, if let's say you make a mistake, or let's say you're not sure if you made a mistake. Did I do this right? I didn't do it right. So on a Torah mitzvah, of the 613, you have to repeat it again and again until you get it right. On a rabbinic law, you don't have to do that. Suffik de Rabbanon, Lakuna. A doubt of a rabbinic law goes lenient. A doubt of a Torah law goes straight. Now, let's say I'm not sure if I said my grace after meals because I had this lovely meal and dozed off a little bit, and I woke up a little bit, and now I don't remember. Did I bench? Didn't I bench? Did I say thank you? I said not. I don't remember. I do it again because it's a Torah law. But let's say I don't remember if I made this brother shahakol or not. That's a rabbinic law. I let it go. You understand? Mm-hmm. One more difference between a rabbinic law and a Torah mitzvah is that whenever there's illness, rabbinic law is lenient. Torah law is not. So, let's say a person has a severe headache. Can I take that person on Shabbat with a severe headache to the hospital on Shabbat? Because no. If he's in danger, something else. But if he's sick, can I give him medicine? There is a rabbinic law against giving medicine on Shabbat. What's the rabbinic law? There was fear that persons would come to measure out a dosage. Nowadays, we don't talk pre-dosage from the pharmacy. But because it was that fear in those days, therefore, they did not allow giving medicine, unless, of course, you're really sick. If you're really sick, it's in the rabbinic law. So rabbinic law would allow you to serve up the medicine.
What if you have to break the seal of the bottle?
Okay, is it breaking the seal of a Torah or a rabbinic law? That's the question.
That would be a Torah.
Well, breaking the seal could be a Torah law, could be a rabbinic law. Why? Because breaking the seal would be, let's say, creating a new cat. Just created a new cat. Creating a cat in Shabbos. Didn't. Now to create something new. You can't build something, correct? Now, opening up a plastic on Shabbos like this, brand new, and then creating a new cat, leaving a ring here, is permissible with plastic. Why? Because plastic has no real significance as a substance, right? It's plastic. It's nothing. Are you allowed to have a statue in your home?
No.
No. It's idolatry. You're allowed to have a baby doll. Can your kids have a baby doll? A doll. Why? Doll's a figure of a person. Whatever it is, it should be idolatrous. Why is it permissible for children to play with baby dolls? Because it's made out of plastic.
But you can chop its head off just to be safe.
If you want to chop its head off, I'm not sure the children will enjoy that. But if, let's say, I had here a cap made out of metal, then I couldn't do this. Couldn't do this, no? Because that'd be forbidden on Shabbos. Okay, right? Now, let's say it's plastic, so it's okay, I can open it. But there's a seal here. There's a seal here. Can I break the seal? No problem breaking something or tearing something. If it's for destructive purposes, I'm not gonna use the seal against destroying it. Now, if there's letters there, I'm sorry, the problem,
If there's,
right? Because then you're erasing.
okay, yes.
But erasing is only forbidden on Shabbos if you intend to rewrite. If you're not rewriting, then you may erase. But you only may erase it. But then,
You're not allowed to change the sheet.
let me explain it better.
Yeah.
Let me explain it better.
Tricky
Let me
now.
explain it better. A mitzvah of the Torah is the 39 violations of Shabbos. So in these 39 violations of Shabbos, the reason they're prohibited to us is because they were used in the construction of the sanctuary, of the Mishkan. If it's done in a constructed fashion, similar to the way it was done in the Beis Hamikdash, then it becomes forbidden to us on Shabbos. We call that in Hebrew, Melechet Machshevet. You ever hear that term? Melechet Machshevet, an act of thought. That's called, in simple English, a professional task. If you do things professionally, the way they did it in the construction of the sanctuary, that's forbidden on Shabbat. But if you do it unprofessionally, without thought, I make a mistake, for instance, and I walk by and accidentally turn on the light. So that's certainly highly unprofessional. Right? If you have intention to turn on the light, turn it on. You have no intention, and all of a sudden it goes on by accident, you did something unprofessional. And therefore, it is not forbidden by the Torah and Shabbos. So rabbis came along and said, we forbid it anyway. We'll make it a little strict. Now, one of the classic examples of Torah versus rabbinic is the prohibition of writing. You're not allowed to write on Shabbos with a pencil or a pen or whatever. You're not allowed to write two letters. To write one is not forbidden. Why? Because two letters is a professional way of writing. Because in Hebrew, there is no word less than two letters. In English, we have an and I. That's a kind of letters in English. But in Hebrew, less than two letters is not a word. Since if you wrote an aleph by itself or a bet by itself, it would mean nothing. Therefore, the writing of one letter is permitted on Shabbat. Long come the Rabbanan and say, don't do it anyway. Because if you'll do, you might come to do the second one. And what does it mean practically to us? It means practically as follows. Let's say you want to violate the Torah law for a person who's ill, you can't. You can't write two letters. But if you can violate the Torah law and violate rabbinic law for a person who's ill and write only one letter, then you can do it. In other words, the rabbinic law of making it stricter is only applicable, all things being equal. But if someone is not well, then you can suspend that extra rabbinic ruling. I was in the hospital, and the doctor said to me, we need to do a procedure on you on Shabbos. He said to me, we need your consent. I said, okay. He said, it's not good enough. We need you to sign. So I said to him, I can't sign Shabbat. Now, I could technically have simply put an X there. And I put an X, it was just fine. I was, frankly, I was in danger. I should have done it. I could have done it too. But even if I wanted to do the rabbinic one, I could just do one letter and be done with it. And I would not have violated anything because it was only rabbinic law anyway. And rabbinic law is only forbidden if everything's being equal. If I'm not well, I can suspend it. You get it? So that's the idea of this extra rabbinic stringency. Now, we're talking about breaking the seal, erasing. Erasing, demolishing, extinguishing are connected to building, writing, and lighting. Is that correct? Building, demolishing, lighting, extinguishing. What's the other one? Writing, erasing. Correct? Well, all these are forbidden on Shabbat from the Torah. They're all part of 39. But only if they're done in a constructive way. If let's say you erase and be done with it, that's not constructive. So that's not forbidden. Walk on the rabbi says forbidden. Building something. Building something is it's forbidden. Demolishing is forbidden as long as you intend to rebuild. But if you're not intending to rebuild, then demolishing is okay. Walk on the rabbi say that's okay. That's okay anyway. Lighting the fire. You light a fire shops. Extinguishing the fire is destructive, unless you're intending to relight. So let's say I intend to relight. So I lit the fire before Shabbos. But after Shabbos started, I then extinguished with the intent to relight. And I relit. How many crimes did I commit?
Wow.
How many things did I commit? I lit the candle before Shabbos, right? Now let's say I lit the candle on Shabbos itself. Okay, I lit the candle on Shabbos. Is that what? I can't do that. Okay, that's okay. But now I extinguished with the intent to relight, and then I relit. How many mistakes did I make? 3. I lit, extinguished with the intent to relight, and I relit. What would happen if, let's say, I lit, extinguished with the intent to relight, but then I never again relit? Let's look at it too. Because the extinguishing was for purpose of relighting, even though I didn't. So at the time it was constructive. How about if I lit?
Is this before Shabbat or why is the first lighting wrong?
Because it was done after Shabbos, I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah, before, I just mixed up with before after. So, but let's say now I lit a candle I lit a candle before Shabbos. Now it's after Shabbos, and I extinguish with no intent to relight. And then I relight. Watch again. I extinguish with no intent to relight. And then I relit.
What's the significance? What's the significance?
So that's we still do too.
What? No, I only did one thing wrong. Because when I extinguished it, my intent was not to relight. Therefore, I was destructive. Then I relit. I did that was wrong. But my extinguishing wasn't wrong because it depended upon my intent. Whether or not my extinguishing is constructive is dependent upon my intent.
But if you get married, you can light the light, right? Wait a second. So I lit the light before Shabbat. Lit Shabbat candles. And then
So forget about the first light. I got a lit candle here.
Okay, got a lit candle. Yep.
If I extinguish it with the purpose of relighting, that's a violation.
No.
If I then relight it, it's 2 violations.
Right.
If I extinguish it without intent to relight, that's the wrong thing.
Is that inquired?
But then I relit, it's a separate one.
You're allowed to put it out,
If you have no intent to relight it, that's correct.
but the putting out, because the world is not supposed to know.
What?
The putting out, the process of putting out, you're not supposed to.
Why not? Because it's one of the 39 forbidden labors? Oh, but destroying is not constructive, so it's okay. If
You're removing.
what I'm trying to explain is that when you do something that's forbidden by the Torah law on Shabbos, but in somehow or another does not become constructive, it becomes destructive, it's not a technical violation. It may be a violation of the Rabbanan. That's something else. But it's not a Torah violation if you did something that's forbidden, but you did it in a destructive manner.
Okay, I have a question.
They're just following by the Bible rules and that's it.
Well, that's right. So we have, but what I'm trying to identify is what's the Rabbanan, what's the Raisa, and in so doing, let you know that under the Rabbanan you can be lenient when there's health issues involved, or when there's doubt issues involved. Otherwise, other than those two issues, you are obligated to be very, very careful with rabbinic law. Just as you would be careful with Torah law. Because rabbinic law is authorized by Torah law. That's the bracha, Shekin Yisharim, Tzavat Tzivanu. When we understand this, then the question comes up, where the Rabbanan extended the law. They said as follows: even though that mitzvah is no longer applicable at this time, the Mashiach comes because there's no temple, nevertheless, we want it done anyway. But if you do it, the way you're supposed to do it, you should be doing it with a realization that you're only doing it in Rabbanan. I don't say the word only advisedly, but I want you to understand it is not a Torah thing. You're observing. You're observing a rabbinic thing. Is that important? Yes. How important? Valuable. Should it be neglected? Of course not. Should it be revered and honored? Absolutely. Except in those extenuating circumstances. So now, there's a mitzvah after Pesach to count the Omer. The mitzvah has many, many ramifications. The mitzvah of connecting Pesach to Shavuot. It's the mitzvah of 7 weeks. It's the mitzvah of preparing for the day of the Torah. It's the belief that the giving of the Torah is the conclusion of the departure from Egypt. It's the belief that that's the essential conclusion of the freedom process. That free people without a Torah, without protection, are dead off because they were slaves in the first place. Many of these value, importance to them. And the counting is value because what are you counting towards? You're counting towards your anticipation for the moment when we will receive the Torah. How exciting is that? The Torah's coming up. You got to, with all these observances of all these holidays and whatever, no, it's not what a reliving them. I mean, didn't you relive to some degree the departure from Egypt when you celebrated Pesach?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Don't
not
you do
so.
every day when you do a chakras and you pray and you say.
Chakras is it. Yeah, but chakras is not necessarily remember. Chakras is for today. Today you have to know because you have to know.
No, but you remember eat the coming out of Egypt every day.
That, right. Okay. That remembrance is not a reliving. It's a remembering. Reliving means Pesach. Eat the matzah. I mean, I could very easily take the matzah, look at it, and say, thank you, goodbye. What am I eating it for? Why am I eating the matzah? To feel what they felt. To relive. I don't do that every day. I do it only on the anniversary of the time we go. So reliving is something that we want to do. Pesach, we want to do it now too. So what were they feeling in the desert as they left Egypt, counted the Omer every day all the way to Sinai? Anticipation, excitement. When is my present coming? They're like little kids almost, Can't wait for the Torah. Oh man, wow. The greatest thing in the whole world. God's will, God's teachings, right? The divine wisdom. So I'm really excited, really waiting for the Torah. Every day. Today is the 23rd day, the 22nd day of the Yom. It's the 22nd. Right, 22nd day of the Yom. Wow. And it's 27, 28 more to go and so forth. The excitement of can't wait to get to go. But it also had a very important meaning at the time when the Jews marched into Israel, built the temple, and had a observance in the temple regarding agriculture.
Actually, kind of two-fold question. A, when Abraham had the covenant with the splitting of the parts of the animals, when God revealed to him that within 400 years, the people are going to suffer within 400 years of being alive. Why wasn't the Torah giving of the Torah referenced at that point? And or B, why wasn't it referenced at the Pesach or at that building into that moment? So So then they're all leaving, but they're not leaving to go someplace for a purpose. It's not revealed.
I think that the reference at the time of departing Egypt to the Torah was mentioned in the 4 cups of wine. We mentioned that the 4 cups of wine represented the 4 levels of freedom. 1, that God stopped suffering. B, that God stopped all forms of work and control that the Egyptians had over us. C, that we left Egypt. D, we received the Torah. So we argue. Well, that's the case. Why don't we receive the Torah right on the spot? Leave Egypt, get the Torah. What are we waiting for? Answer?
Because there were 49 different spiritual levels that we had to progress.
Correct.
Be prepared.
We were entrenched in 49 levels of impurity, having assimilated into Egyptian society. We needed to get that out of us. We needed cleansing.
The moment that Sinai was the apex of the
Correct.
whole adventure from Abraham.
Correct, but you gotta focus right now on Egypt, on Testament, right? And understanding the departure from Egypt and the freedom process, Torah is part of that. The only reason it's delayed is because we weren't ready for it.
Well, it's not even mentioned.
Sure it is. It says, I will take you to me, my people. I'm gonna give you a Torah. In fact, God tells out the Moshe Rabbeinu himself at the burning bush.
Mhm.
He tells him, you're gonna come back here and get that Torah. That's what I'm saying you need in the first place. So, if that's true, the other factor of the counting of the Omer is the factor of agriculture. Years later, the Jews march into Israel, build a temple, and there's an agricultural expression of service and thanksgiving to Hashem in the temple. We mentioned this a couple of days ago. At each season, it is appropriate for the Jews to express their gratitude to Hashem for the seasonal occurrence that will help the produce grow and keep us healthy and well. Everyone knows that at Sukkot, as the summer is over, beginning of fall and winter, we're looking forward to the wind, to rain. We're looking forward to rain. We pray Hashem, bring us rain. We all know in California what we see without rain, right? So rain is very important. For Jews, Israel, rain is so important that if we don't, the rain doesn't come, we start fasting. We start crying. We start begging Hashem. Why are we being cursed? So, in order to pray to Hashem and do some sort of ceremony as a way of thanking Him in advance for what's going to be, we take a big jug of water and we make a big libation or pouring of water over the Mizbeach, over the altar in Yerushalayim, in the base of Mikdash, and this will be a big celebration. And it became the biggest celebration in Israel ever, all year round. The celebration of drawing of water. And the same place where we would do daily a pouring of wine, we do during these 8 days of Sukkot, pouring of water, and make a big celebration. And we pray for rain. And
there is almost everything that happened to us since we left Egypt and we got the Bible. Every miracle that we got, we celebrate. Instead, I don't think that I found any celebration of eating the man. We got the man.
that's a great question, and that's it. I'll answer that before I finish. Hold on, that's a great question. So now, comes Pesach, and the rainy season's over. We're looking forward to a nice productive harvest and growth. And so we take a measurement of rain. And the measurement is called Omer. We take it, we bring it to the temple in Yerushalayim, and we have this celebration and this wonderful service for Hashem. Thank you, Hashem, for the new grains, and we're looking forward to a beautiful year of great produce and much grain and so forth. I also mentioned to you, I think last week, that we weren't permitted to eat new grains ever since Rosh Hashanah. Anything was grown since Rosh Hashanah, it's been forbidden to us to eat until after Pesach, and until after the first Seder, until after the first day of Pesach. So this was the idea of bringing the Omer was actually the permission of now permitting you to now eat new grains. But it was accompanied by a sacrifice, as most services are.
problem is that there's no more sacrifice or service in that temple in regards to the Omer. So the rabbis asked the question, if that's the case, that there's no more sacrifice of the Omer, why are we counting? The mitzvah of counting was based upon, I know it's the dissipation of the Torah, correct. But it was based upon the bringing of that measurement of grain, called the Omer. How can you call the counting of the Omer? Counting of the measurement, there's no measurement, there's no grain, there's no nothing. We're not doing any of that now. And there's no sacrifice accompanying with either. So why is there a need to count?
Shavuot.
Agreed. But if it's called the Omer and it's based upon a connected with the sacrifice, and there's no sacrifice, let's put it this way. If you got a mitzvah to do, called the sacrifice, and according to, and in addition to the sacrifice, you do the counting based upon the beginning of the sacrifice, there's no sacrifice, there's no counting.
You don't have to get to the Omer if you don't count.
What?
I'm just kidding, how you get to the Shavuot if you don't count?
Well, I guess you can count. I'm saying, is there an obligation to count?
There's two, I see this two.
Yeah, I know. I understand you say you for the Torah, but at the end of the day, it's called the Omer. It's not called the counting to the Torah. It's called counting of the Omer. It was based upon the agricultural experience, and that doesn't exist anymore. Here's another one. The Torah says, "You shall eat on Pesach night the Passover sacrifice with matzah and morah, matzah and bitter herbs." Now, other places, 3 or 4 other places in the Torah all still do eat matzah, but nowhere does it tell you again eat bitter herbs. Nowhere. Just that one time, according to the sacrifice. You shall eat the meat of the sacrifice of Pesach on Pesach night with the matzah and with the morah. Now, matzah, I understand, you got to eat no matter what, because it says it 3 or 4 other times in the Torah. But if morah, bitter herbs, is not repeated, and it's only mentioned once as a connection to the sacrifice, and there is no sacrifice this man is in this time, as we all know, why are we eating the bitter herbs? You hear the question?
I hear. I understand.
The bitter herbs, I mean, you can eat it, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's no mitzvah. There's no mitzvah to eat bitter herbs without the sacrifice. There is a mitzvah to eat matzah without, I understand. So matzah remains a mitzvah to go, you have to do it. But moror, we do it nowadays, not because of the Torah obligation, because of the Torah obligation, because there's no sacrifice we're obligated with. There's no Korban Pesach anymore. Therefore, the only thing we do is we do the bitter herbs, leave it up on. It's a rabbinic mitzvah. In other words, it's to say that what once was a mitzvah of the Torah, suspended because of the lack of sacrifice, can be reinstituted on a rabbinic level, which is a little lower level. You can make leniencies that you can't make with Torah law, and you can do so in order to remember the way it used to be, so that you'll know how to reinstitute it when it comes day and Mashiach will come again. So therefore, we now have this new ruling of the Rabbanon called Zecher L'Mikvah. Remember the way it used to be. When you do so, you fulfill a rabbinic law, and that's an important one. Now, let's say a person wasn't feeling so good on Pesach, and it's hard for him to eat matzah. But he's not dying, he's gonna eat the matzah. So what? You can do about it. But let's say the person was not feeling well, and he really couldn't handle those bitter herbs. Today's world, since it's rabbinic, you can be lenient with it because he's not feeling well. Because it's not a Torah law anymore. It will become soon one day when Mashiach comes, but it's not today. So you have to know that same ruling applies to the counting of the Omer. Counting of the Omer today, according to most people, is not a Torah law. Even though it says so right in the Torah, it says, but not anymore. Because it was connected to a sacrifice that can't be done. Therefore, the ruling is now that it's a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, a rabbinic mitzvah, which is a mitzvah that the rabbis ask you to do. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so my question would, as a follow-up to this, is why do we daven 3 times a day?
Okay, so the reason we daven 3 times a day, first of all, why do we daven? Start with that. Why do we daven?
Well, praise God.
Praise God.
Praising
Why?
Hashem.
Okay, what's the source? What's the source of our obligation to pray?
The sacrifices.
The sacrifices.
This is my point.
Right. It was a daily morning sacrifice, and it was a daily afternoon sacrifice, and they burnt the fats of the sacrifices at night. That's Shachris, Mincha, Ma'ariv. So maybe the Rabbanim realized that these prayer services took the place or replaced the sacrifices. If that's the case, then clearly these prayers that we do are rabbinic. It's the Rabbanim. Rabbi said, pray instead of sacrifice, but you can't do the sacrifice, you pray at the same time. But the funny thing about that is that there was another reason given for 3 times a day prayer. And that's Abraham, Yitzchak,
Okay.
yeah. We find in the Torah story where Abraham rises in the morning to pray Shacharit. We find in the Torah, in the afternoon, Yitzchak is going out and meditating, praying, Rif is coming to meet him. We find that Yaakov says an evening prayer at the Temple Mount when he was having the dream upon leaving Eretz Yisrael to go to Lot. So that seems to have a Torah source. So the real question is prayer of Torah or rabbinic? It's a machlokes, it's a dispute. Rambam says it's Torah. Ramban says it's rabbinic. Rambam, same name as a man. Ramban, so a man. Yeah. Torah says in the Shema, second portion, you should follow the mitzvahs of Hashem and serve him with all your heart. So the rabbis asked the question, how do you serve God with your heart? Now, I can serve God with my hands, or I can do it with my hands. I can serve God with my legs, I'll walk to shul. I can serve God with my nose, I'll smell the sweet spices on Saturday night. I can serve God with my eyes, I'll watch or I'll read the Sefer Torah or whatever. How do you serve God with your heart? Feel like prayer. So now the question is, how many times a day? So inasmuch as the rabbi set up the 3 based upon the sacrifices, that's forbidden. So davening you gotta do. How it's defined, or how it's set up, that's forbidden. And the question is, does that apply to women? So if it's a morning, afternoon, evening discipline, obviously it doesn't, because that's a time discipline that doesn't apply to women. But if you say that women are obligated to daven at whatever time they want, and they're not governed by the time factor, they do have to serve God with their heart. So then they can daven anytime they want. So they got to daven once a day.
Does that explain why they're always naked, right?
What?
Wait, what question? No, it's an important question. What is it again, please?
We'll ask them later.
That explains why they're always naked.
Yeah, okay, good, thank you.
Trying to be funny. That's my job.
So exactly. Sidecar.
That's what I've done.
Yeah, it's just, I had somebody in the back that needed.
So if in fact there is a sense of time factor women are exempt from, but the actual service of the heart is not governed by time, that's forbidden. So the daven, they have to daven, women have to daven whenever they want. Men are governed to the 3 times, because they're governed by time. But the point is that the concept of rabbinic law, vis-a-vis Torah law, needs to be identified. You need to identify one from the other, so that you can make a distinction as to what you can do under given circumstances. A Torah law can't be compromised, except for danger. A rabbinic law can be, if it's health, if there's doubt, and so forth. And so the canon of the Omer, for all intents and purposes today, is rabbinic. So we come, one.
So I have a question. So we know that the prophets revealed that the temple would be destroyed, and that people would be scattered. And so then they implemented the prayer service, right? Well, isn't that in essence God really reaching down to us and saying, I want to have a closer relationship with you? Because
No,
a sacrifice, it seems somewhat.
it's very close.
So what's closest?
Sacrifice, hold on. What's the Hebrew word for sacrifice?
What's the shortage of the word korban? Thank you. Sacrifice small clothes. You know what?
No.
The sacrifice is a question. Prayer's words. If you mean it, you mean it. That's, I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, it's where it costs you, it's in the pocket. Sacrifice each in the pocket. Your animal costs you a lot of money. Sacrifice an animal and food. Maybe bring a $5,000 donation. Over a man. But in any event, I want to introduce people to this notion of a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, of a mitzvah, a rabbinical mitzvah that is reinstituting a Torah law that became obsolete because of the lack of the temple, and will reinstitute. The 613 will never change. And so when a convert stands in front of the ceremony and says, I accept mitzvot, she's got to accept not just this book, but all 613. What he or she must say is, I accept the full gamut of the law. So some of it I have experience, some of it I haven't, some of it I know, some of it I don't know, doesn't matter. You have to sense the fullness of Jewish life. And I came across this, like I came across that lady who had a problem with homosexuality. I came across people that had problems with sacrifices. Well, I can't imagine the barbarism of sacrifice. Excuse me. Meat? Meat? It was slaughtering an animal. And it was slaughtering the animal for an elevated purpose of a sacrifice to service of Hashem in the temple, in which the service demonstrated a tremendous sense of God's will. But I don't understand it completely. Well, guess what? Neither do I. That's our acceptance. That's where we accept the Torah that teaches us all these great teachings and traditions. Is the same Torah that taught us it's going to be sacrificed. There was sacrifices, and it's going to be. I mean, let's face it this way. Pesach night, eating matzah and eating the bitter herbs, as we said, midrabanan. Matzah from the Torah. But you're eating it together with the sacrifice. Well, wait a second, this is sacrifice. So we're not eating the sacrifice. Oh, what was the name of the sacrifice? It was called the Passover sacrifice.
Oh,
Korban Pesach. What's the name of the holiday? Pesach. Passover. You mean to tell me that here's the, I'm writing a book, and it's called Passover, right? And in this book, you don't find one mention of Passover whatsoever. Isn't that a little funny? Isn't that a little funny? I mean, we're celebrating a Passover, and the Passover sacrifice is not being eaten. Do you understand what we're missing? How many people attended to say it? Everybody wanted to say it, right? You all saw it was beautiful, regal, magnificent, tremendous. And the most important part was this. Do we understand, therefore, how important sacrifices are? They're the essence. They're the essence of service of Hashem. We're missing. So we accept that it once was. We accept that I don't understand why, but maybe beyond me, it will come once again. And we accept the notion that many other things that what we cannot replace, we can't. What we can on a rabbinical level. Can you replace the Passover sacrifice today? No. There's no temple. Why not? Once the temple was built, it was never again allowed to bring the sacrifice anywhere else but there. Before that, what'd you do? You went out to your backyard, you looked yourself a little altar, and you did a sacrifice. Maybe you didn't know how to do it, you got a rabbi to help you. Whatever. Right? But the sacrifice all over the place anymore. Once the Jews built that permanent structure in Jerusalem, once that temple was built, no sacrifice could ever be given anywhere else. So we're stuck. We can't bring it anymore. We stand, sure we stand. What do we reinstitute? Certainly. What do we do in the meantime? We'll do whatever Pesach we can. So matzah we can continue because matzah is the mitzvah of the Torah isn't dependent upon the sacrifice. Tell the story, it's a mitzvah of the Torah, it doesn't depend upon the sacrifice, but moror does. Therefore, moror is no longer applicable. So why do we do it? The rabbis reinstituted it to do what? To keep you mindful of the way it used to be and the way it will be once again. And that's the same thing with the canon of the Omer. The canon of the Omer
is a mitzvah where we want to count every day anticipating the Torah, like you said. But at the same time, it's also a mitzvah that you want to that you want to celebrate the prayer for new grains. And in that sense, it doesn't apply. So because it doesn't, therefore, there's no sacrifice of the Omer anymore. We count the Drabon. The counting that we assume today and that we do today and perform today is of rabbinic origin. It's a rabbinic mitzvah. So rabbis will reinstitute laws, but on a lower level, not a Torah level, but on a rabbinic level. This coming week, we're going to read a new parsha. Anyone know this coming parsha? Anybody? Emor. In Emor, we're going to learn all about the counting of the Omer, amongst many other things as well. Emor is really dedicated to the Kohanim. And dedicated to the, this whole book is dedicated to the Kohanim in terms of sacrifices and stuff. This third book that we're reading. But this parsha is dedicated to his private life, his personal life. And it's very fascinating because it shows some of the extra demands and restrictions placed upon the Kohen that and the special status that he has. And we're going to talk about why he's got that special status and how it's conferred and how it's built upon. We're going to talk about the uniqueness of the Torah. But then the following parsha is about Shemitah. Shemitah is the sabbatical year. And a sabbatical year is when you're not allowed to plant in the field of Eretz Yisrael. The prohibition of planting in the 7 years is sabbatical, a Shemitah. But we all know that number 7 is a very special number. We all know that at the end of 6 comes the 7th. The 7th is special. It's time to relax. 6 days you shall work, 7th day is Shabbat. 6 years you shall plant, 7th year you don't. This rule only applies to Eretz Yisrael. Doesn't have the sanctity of Los Angeles. You can, LA. But Eretz Yisrael, you can't plant. And you can't even harvest, except what you need to eat. So it's a great amount of sacrifice for a farmer who makes his whole living on the crops that he grows and he brings to market, sells. And he can't do that. Now, again, the number 7 is the idea God created it. I've said many times that all different time frameworks have happenings. You know, the day begins with sunrise. You know, the day ends with sunset. You know, the moon, the month begins around because of the moon. You know, the rotation of the earth around the sun gives you a whole year, but nothing happens that tells you about a week. Except God says. I'll put that into motion and creation. I want people resting on the 7th day. If there's nothing happening, you see anything in the sky, it tells you it's the 7th day. You see anything anywhere else? You see anything change over in the rivers or something on trees? Nothing. Does you know how to count to 7? Nothing else, we should know how to count to 7. But then that 7 becomes so special because it's 7 weeks to Shavuot. And it's 7th month that becomes the month of Rosh Hashanah. And it's the 7 years that becomes the sabbatical. And then 7 Shemitahs, sabbatical years, becomes the Yovel, the Jubilee at the end of the 400th year, the 50th year. What happens to the 50th year? So economically speaking, there is a thing called the return of property. In other words, if I sell you a piece of property in Eretz Yisrael, you can't be an owner completely on it, ever. Whatever you buy is temporary because property is permanent. In other words, whatever we were assigned, our tribe and my particular family is our homestead, that's forever. And that was assigned by Joshua, the moment we got into Eretz Yisrael. You get that, you get that, you get this, you get that. That's what it was. But now I need to sell because I need some money. So I say to this guy, I'll tell you what, I will sell you my property for $500,000. I said, sure, I'd love to buy it. I can build on it, I can have crops on it, I can make money on it. I did a lot of things with that piece of property. You sure you want to give it over? I need the money broke. I got debts, I got this, I got that. I need $500,000. So the guy buys it. 25 years later, I come by to the guy. I said, you know what? During these 25 years, I was able to make up the 500,000. I was able to make up 250,000. So I know that according to the amount of time that I sold it to you, which is 50 years, right? I still owe 250,000. But I came up with the cash. I won the lottery, whatever. So I take the 250,000. I say, would you be so kind as to return the land to me for the $250,000? So he says, well, yeah, give it to us anyway. But it was renting it, frankly. The purchase is really more than rental. So therefore, give me the 250 and I get my thing back. Now comes the 50th year, the Yovel, and I say, I want it back for nothing. And you get it back. You hear that? In other words, any purchase in that show really is not ever permanent. It's always temporary. You get it? Because it's almost like a rental. Because people get their property returned thing at the end of the year. One other thing that it's also very interesting is the ownership of slaves. Owning slaves was a situation that occurred because people got into, again, serious financial problems, financial debt. I owe $100,000. It is. So I robbed the bank. I robbed $100,000 bank. I got to pay back. I mean, so you don't go to jail. What you do is you find some wealthy religious man, like Gino over there. He's very religious, very wealthy, and he says, "Well, I'll pay your debt of $100,000 back to the bank. You got to come to work for me." So of course I agreed. I take the $100,000, pay it to the bank. He pays it to the bank. Now I'm yours. Now, right? So, you know, I worked for 7 years. So in working for 7 years, I work off the debt. Let's say if it's 60,000, 10,000 a year. So at the end of 3 years, if I come up with 30,000, maybe I got a relative that comes up with the 30,000. He gives it to you, and I go free. During the time that I'm with you, you have to be nice. You got to give me work to do, but reasonably. No, I have a job, 5. You don't pay me, of course. You already paid. But be nice. You can't give me. You can't say shine my shoes, right? You have to say give me the work that I'm trained to do, and treat me with respect. And of course, but I'm still under your control. Now, of course, if let's say for some strange reason there's only one pillow in the house, I get it instead of you, because you have to be nice to the slave. Okay,
And you also want me to provide them a place to sleep.
yeah, with my family, too, of course. Now, this doesn't sound like a very good financial arrangement for you. You understand? But why do you do it? Because without being rich, he's also righteous. He's a good guy. He's a religious guy. He wants to help out another Jew. He's a fine man, right? I'll introduce them later. Get to know Gino. It's rich. Anyway, so now comes the Yovel, and it's within the 6 years of work. I go free anything. The Jubilee, the Yovel, the 50th year says freedom, and it says so in the Torah.
No question, is it 50 years since I got, or 50 years for Yovel?
No, whenever the cycle of the Yovel falls in.
Okay, so if I got into a year before Yovel comes.
You're done. You're done. Yovel freedom is an amazing freedom that says, "Ukrosem dror b'chol haaretz v'chol yoshveh." Proclaim liberty and freedom to all those who live in the land. The founding fathers of the United States of America, Washington, Jefferson, Adams, Madison, Jackson, all those guys, they were Bible studiers. Christians, but they studied the Bible. They took that passage and wrote it and inscribed it on the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. If you go to Philadelphia today, you can still see it. They believed that this sense of freedom, that was the impetus to revolt against the British and make the United States of America. This passage is a passage that, according to the Torah, can only be proclaimed in the temple in Jerusalem. If there's no temple in Jerusalem, you can't make the proclamation. So therefore, the whole idea doesn't work anymore. And therefore, there's no Yovel. There's no Jubilee. If there's no Yovel, that means there's no Shemitah either. There's no sabbatical year of no planning. Because it was linked together. 7 years planning, sabbatical, 7 sabbaticals, 49, 50. So nowadays we observe the Shemitah. This year, the year 5782 is a sabbatical year. It's a Shemitah, and we observe it as a big project. Just to show you when a mitzvah becomes obsolete, because of, let's say, the practicality of it, doesn't mean that we forget about it. And the rabbis do whatever they could to reinstitute the mitzvah, albeit on a lower level, just so you remember the way it used to be. And that's why it's important for us who are in the midst of the Omer, counting the 7 weeks, to also be aware of the fact that this is the 7th year of the cycle. And the cycle is well known since history, and you can go over that and you find out that this year, 5782, was a sabbatical year. I remember the first sabbatical year we came across was 66, 5726, 1966. And then we count every 7 years since then till today. We have another sabbatical year. So with this in mind, you see the significance of the number 7. And the significance of the number 7 represents to us the culmination of human activity. You'll say 10 should be a culmination. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and you're right. It said those 3 extras are for the extras in the heavenly world. 7 are down here. What are those 7 spheres, or those 7 steps? So to understand them, we need to understand them in terms of the counting of the Omer. And that we will do with Hashem on Thursday, when I show you what each one represents. But each one is represented by an individual Jewish hero. And anybody know who those heroes are? Starting from number 1. Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, and David. You have to know those 7 names. Those are 7 shepherds. And we're going to represent on Thursday, we're going to explain what each one of these people represent in terms of character growth, in terms of human development, in terms of the various different qualities that they represent, and what we should be working on during the son of the Omer. So our pseudo comedian over here, Mr. Alex Fisher, Alexander Akiva, had the great privilege of converting before Pesach, and he brought a little pair of goodies and refreshments for all of us to partake of. So please, everyone, as we leave today, please make sure you get a bite, make a bracha, and wish him a big mazel tov. Mazel tov.